Well, welcome again, and thank you for being here. We're glad you're here with us. Um, Today, I wanted to talk about our overall theme, which is on the brink of everything, and how we can reunite with awe and wonder. And I wanted to start with a very familiar poem. Many of you have seen this if you're on social media. Through the dark days of this pandemic, people would post this poem. It has a universal, eternal quality to it that speaks to different parts of our nature. So join me in hearing once again the piece of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. And for a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I think that might be the first time I've made it through that poem without crying. Came close. So the part of that poem, every piece of this poem is so precisely beautiful. But the one that captured me right now, because I feel like our world is on the brink of everything now, that the pandemic, although still raging all over the world, we're finding solutions, we're finding ways to change and be together once more in the coming months and years. And so we're on that brink. And so the part of the poem that caught me, and for a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free, that part. And for me, the whole spiritual journey is about freedom. Freedom from constricted ways of living, constricted ways of thinking, constricted ways of relating with people. That the hope and the promise of walking a spiritual path, really, no matter what tradition you are following, is that in working with the spiritual laws and practices and principles that path invites us into, that we become freer and freer and more illumined from within with the divine. And so that freedom is what I'm interested in. I don't know about you, but very much so. And so I'm noticing the ways that freedom sneaks into my daily life. And I wanted to talk about that and about my own experience as well as others in a couple of different ways. I was telling the practitioners who are here that I was being shown all these different snapshots of different things that I've encountered this week. And so you're getting kind of a collage of Dr. Andrea's life, but also a collage of being on the brink of everything and how to be free in it. So, so one of the first things that I wanted to show you was an actual picture. And so I'm going to ask my sound tech, Deb Dole, if she wouldn't mind popping that picture up. There it is. And I don't know if you can see it well, but this is my little granddaughter, Lulu. And Lulu just started walking. She's 17 months old. And in her hand, she has 3 rocks. And she's glued to those rocks. She thinks they're the most awesome things in the entire world. And she's at the beach walking for the very first time. And so there's magic all around her as she discovers the cold wetness of water and sand that mix together, and the magic of stones and shells and birds flying overhead. And so that picture for me as a grandmother was a picture of our original freedom that you and I all had at one point in our lives. No matter how dysfunctional and wacky our family might have turned out to be, there was a moment in all of our growing up that, just like Lulu, we encountered the world with this complete awe-inspiring freshness of sight and expression, and everything was new, and everything just led to more of everything, and it was a state of being that I wish all sacred humans could have all the time. And so that picture captures for me what I'm interested in feeling now in my 60s, and what I'm interested in conveying to you, because for me, that sense of wild awe, that sense of encountering life anew and new and new is not lost simply because we grow up, but it does get covered over with the miasma of concerns and worries and doubts and fears, just like Wendell Berry was saying. When I wake in the night, afraid for my own life and the lives of my children, in despair, you know, I don't know very many adults that have walked the world without, from time to time, visiting despair and fear. And so how does that all belong in a recaptured sense of Lulu Bell's freedom? How do we retain the awe and wonder of our young years in the now of our lives? And so that's a question I've been walking with for a long time on the spiritual path. And so I have some answers because I've been asking the question and Spirit's been answering. So one of them I found in one of Ernest Holmes' books. Ernest Holmes is the founder of the Science of Mind philosophy that this center is a part of. And this is what he says: our highest satisfaction, now think about that, our highest satisfaction comes from our union with the invisible life, finding such an inward wholeness that all sense of fear, doubt, and uncertainty vanishes. So that's the first clue in recapturing awe and wonder and being fresh in our lives, no matter what age we are, is this recognition that we are in union with an invisible life that has nothing to do with doubt, fear, or any other miasma of emotion that may be trying to keep us from feeling joy and awe. I was thinking about my years as a therapist. This is another snapshot that came through. And, you know, therapists often work with people who are not happy. You may have noticed. It took me a while to really, that it didn't dawn on me right at first becoming a therapist that I'd be working pretty much with unhappy people. And, and so that was like a recognition that led me to leave therapy at a certain point. But while I was working with people, it was a real honor to work with people who were really going through difficult times. And coming as I had as a minister of the science of mind into that profession, I had this whole view of the possibilities that any sacred human might have for having a different experience than the unhappiness of the present moment. But I remember encountering anxiety and depression and grief and realizing and recognizing that those were not bad expressions. They were simply one expression that a sacred human would move through, and that what was difficult was when we got trapped in those things, trapped in anxiety so that anxiety became a way of life, trapped in depression so that we never ever moved into joy, trapped in grief, which is understandable for a time when we've lost someone dear to us, but trapped is not an experience that grief needs to bind us in. And so I began to ask the question, how do we be free? How do we be free? How does someone who's experiencing these states be free? And so part of what I realized is it's really an inside job. No surprise, right? If you're listening here, you know that already. And that was captured by something that happened this week. I heard two real stories. They were about the vaccinations that are going on for the COVID-19 virus. And the first story I heard was about a nurse. And the nurse was a nurse that had been practicing in COVID wards in the hospital. And she was a first-line person to receive the vaccine because of the dangerous nature of her work around the virus. And so she received the vaccine, and as she received it, she was overwhelmed with grief. And when she was asked, what's the grief? She said, for all the people that didn't make it this far, who lost their lives from a virus that now we have solutions for. And she wept. And in the same week, I heard another story. And this story was quite different. It was from, I've been holding a Zoom coffee hour for anyone that wants to come on Tuesday mornings. And so one of my regular folks went to get the vaccine with her husband. And they've been completely isolated from their family from the time the pandemic shut us all in. And so they received their vaccines together, the vaccinations together. And as they walked out from receiving their vaccinations, they literally were in ecstasy. They were in this ecstatic state that lasted for hours and hours. And, you know, when asked, well, what was that about? And they said, we can see our grandchildren, we can see our children, we're free. And both from the same thing. And those two stories wound together in my mind because it's important to understand that there is nothing wrong with having difficult experiences and difficult emotional states. There's something wrong with passing through doubt or fear or uncertainty or depression or anxiety or grief. Nothing. And there's something wrong with being ecstatic in the moment of feeling the freedom that actually is our birthright and is right there. Now, the question is, did they need the vaccination to feel grief? Did they need the vaccination to feel free? And I don't think either of them would say, yes, we needed that. No, they didn't need it, but it was a place, an opening. And that's why I bring you those two stories. Because for me, what I've discovered about living more and more freely in the world is that the openings are daily, hourly, moment by moment, when we are aware of them. The trick is how to be aware of them. So another snapshot that showed itself to me, I hope this is making sense to you, it is to me. I was standing in my kitchen. I'm a very early riser. And this time of year where I live, the light is just starting to return into the sky before 8. And it was early. It was 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. And there was light showing up outside just a little bit. And I had made myself a cup of tea. And for whatever reason, that opening was there and I took it. And I was standing there in my pajamas, making this tea, looking out at the light returning to the sky. And I looked down, and in that liminal light that was showing, it illuminated the steam coming up from my cup. And I was mesmerized for a moment by the beauty of this whole experience. The spring returning, the light returning into the sky in the mornings, the beauty of having a warm cup of tea, the steam rising, me awake in the world. It was all, there was no thought in it. I'm describing it, but there's no thought in it. It was just free in that moment, awake in that moment. And later that same day, I was walking in a park. And we have some gorgeous parks where I live, and this one's a really big park. And I was walking under these tall trees, and all of a sudden, there was, have you ever heard the expression, a murder of crows? There was a murder of crows, meaning that there was a huge, huge flock of crows, and something was really upsetting them. It could have been an eagle. I couldn't see what it was, but there were literally, the sky was full of crows flying and cawing and circling and making a huge ruckus. And I'm under the trees looking up, and it's another one of those opening moments where time froze, it went away, and I was just there in the world with the crows, with the trees, with myself there. So for me, the teaching here that I wanted to convey today is that we're always on the brink of everything. And we're always in a position, if we're awake, for an opening into the world that is timeless and free and filled with awe and wonder. It's always there. Even in the most difficult of moments, it's there. But we do have to be present with it to experience that incredible oneness with all life, the awe and wonder of being a sacred human on this amazing planet. So as I was thinking about all this, and I was getting this picture of Lulu with her mommy writing underneath that photo, I'm remembering the awesomeness of rocks through her. And that's another piece of the puzzle here in terms of if you want to be free, as I do, is we can let other people help us remember. We can let dogs help us remember, and cats help us remember, and horses help us remember. We can let a stream help us remember, and trees. We can let a child or an old person. We can actually seek out those moments through being in relationship with life. And so that's what I actually brought to my therapy patients, was a reminder that the moment is there, but we have to bring ourselves to it. The moment of freedom from depression or anxiety or doubt or fear or grief, uncertainty is there. And bringing ourselves into that may require of us a reaching out, because those states cover us up and they're like a wet blanket that holds us down if we're not careful. So we actually have to do some effort to move toward freedom. So there are several ways I do that. You've heard about all the ways I encountered it this week. But I wanted to specifically tell you the practices that I've been doing for years that have assisted me in being more fully present and awake. The first is I have focused on the spiritual practice of love for decades. What does that mean? I've focused on really paying attention to loving the world and loving other people and loving myself. And am I perfect at that? No. I still get caught over and over again. And yet, because it's a spiritual practice, even in those moments I'm caught, I'm reminded to look for the lovable, to look for the love in something, and to especially look for the love here. So that's a spiritual practice for me, and I don't talk about it very much because for a long time it just seemed to be the way I was, and then I realized, no, that's a practice that I've been doing forever. The next one is a practice that's very, very popular in the world. My teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, was responsible for bringing it into popularity with many other Buddhist instructors through the decades that we've been through. But it's the practice of mindfulness. And what is that practice? For those of you who maybe have never done it, really, it's the practice of being awake in the moment. That's what it is. And the way we practice it is we take the things that are most habituated in us, washing the dishes, making the bed, doing the laundry, taking the trash out, cleaning the bathroom, the simple, repetitive things that we do, driving to work, sitting in front of our computer, driving a car, anything that we do habitually, we begin to turn it into a place, an opportunity for practicing being fully awake in it. So instead of just washing the dishes and not being there, just wanting to get it done so that you can go on to something else, it's being fully present with the bubbles and the sponge and the dish, and fully focused in the incredible, amazing opportunity that we have to have fresh water and hot water and all kinds of things like that. So mindfulness has been a practice of mine as well. Coupling mindfulness and love together has been profound for me. It's allowed me to love people that I never, ever could have loved in my earlier years. It's allowed me to love myself in ways that I wasn't sure I could ever attain. And more than anything, it's allowed me to be free in the world. Free to love being here. And I must say that Loving being here is really what Wendell Berry was speaking to in that wonderful poem. I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I am wishing you grace in this day. I'm wishing you an opening to feel the freedom that you are and that you have. And so I'll do a short prayer for that, and we will move into the next part of our service. Join me. I rest in the grace of the one mind, the one spirit that is in the world, operating through the world, operating through me and all life. As I rest in the grace of this, my heart and mind are awakened. And awake to the grace, I am set free again and again from limited ideas, limited ways of being, habitual forms of action that don't serve me. Awakened in this way, I become freer and freer with each passing moment, every day, a new, incredible moment of awe and wonder. I find myself loving my life and loving life in all of its many different expressions, even the difficult ones. I see them as precious. And I experience love awakened in my heart in times of difficulty in myself and in other people. And that love informs me in ways to be even freer. So with deep gratitude for being awake and staying awake, for the freedom that is offered and the grace of the world that I have been born into, I'm so grateful. And I release this prayer, knowing that that gratitude for love and freedom are operating in me and anyone listening all the time. And so it is.